Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Community Development Committee meeting for Thursday, July 9th, 2020, and take a moment to recognize that we're gathered today on the traditional territories of the Sea and Squamish First Nations. We have an agenda in front of us with a couple of late items that followed, but the agenda itself is not amended to the best of my knowledge. Is there anything anybody would like to add or remove or change, or otherwise can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Great, thank you very much. Before we get going, can I have a motion to receive the presentations, reports, and communications, please? Moved, seconded, all in favor? Okay. First up, Annex A. We've got Andrea Watson from the Sunshine Coast Skating Club, Stuart Frizzell from the Sunshine Coast Minor Hockey Association, and Kate Turner, Registrar, regarding youth returning to ice sports. So I think we're going to promote those people in. Just a heads up that when you are promoted in to become a panelist, your Zoom will restart, so don't be alarmed. So IT, if you can take care of that.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Good morning, everybody. And I guess we will turn it over to you. You've got 10 minutes-ish. We do have a long agenda today, so if you go a minute or two over, it's not the end of the world, but I will ask that you try and keep your presentation within that 10 minutes. So go ahead.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for letting us address you in this Planning and Community Development meeting. I'm Stuart Frizzell, President of Sunshine Coast Minor Hockey.
And I'm Andrea Watson, President of the Sunshine Coast Skating Club.
And I'm Kate Turner, Registrar for both the Sunshine Coast Minor Hockey Association as well as the Sunshine Coast Skating Club.
We know you have a full agenda, so let's get started. It's been 5 months since the last time we met, and a lot has happened in the world since then. I want to thank you for the decision you made last meeting to provide us with ice until the end of May. Our members were very pleased and excited to use the seashell surface for the range of spring programs we had prepared. When the pandemic forced closure of public facilities, they were disappointed, but understood that safety was the top priority. We certainly appreciate all the work of Dr. Henry and Minister Dix, and our success in flattening the curve across the province shows their recommendations were sound. Using science as a basis for policymaking has helped to safeguard the public, and our knowledge of the virus is now much greater than it was in the early days. Municipal leaders of the Sunshine Coast embraced the provincial guidelines, and our case count has been negligible throughout the pandemic. Thank you for your work in helping protect the community. In addition to expressing our gratitude, we're here today to talk with you about the need we have on the coast to return our children to sport. In the height of distancing measures, we surveyed our membership, and the responses showed an overwhelming desire to return. To date, minor hockey has seen nearly 85% of members register for the 2020-21 hockey season, which is right on par for this time of year. The skate club has been maximizing skater numbers, attending Lower Mainland facilities over the past month, and have reached capacity for the star and competitive program registration for the upcoming season.
As providers of ice sports, our organisations represent families, and as such, we strive to meet the needs of our youth while maintaining the safety of our whole family. A key aspect of youth sport is the shared experience of the kids with their parents and grandparents participating in the stands. We understand that some aspects of our programs will look different when we return, but we are prepared to adapt so that we can provide our youth with the organised sports that are so essential to their well-being. It is knowing the positive effects that participating in sports has on our children's development that compels us to provide programs for them as soon as possible. We see that coming out of the pandemic, they will need sports more than ever. When considering the impact on our budget, the old question of can we afford to is quickly answered by the science, which clearly tells us we can't afford not to. The slide here shows information from Statistics Canada illustrating that youth have suffered the greatest impact, with 64% of reporting a negative impact on mental health. While closer to home, the Sunshine Coast RCMP, public health professionals and other outreach services have confirmed that they have seen a large increase in mental health and anxiety, as well as an increase in sexual assaults and domestic violence. And not just intimate domestic violence, but family violence on a whole. As we are aware, the more outside buffers, such as trusted adults in a child's life outside of the home, like teachers, officials, coaches, and trusted parent volunteers, can protect and safeguard against abuse within the home, which is supposed to be a safe place, but unfortunately not the case for everyone.
Along with numerous private facilities, we are encouraged to see that several municipalities are now reopening their rec facilities. This demonstrates a strong commitment to the health of their communities. When families are required to use Lower Mainland facilities for ice, we know that their dollars leave the coast with them, and we also know that their travel footprint has increased. We believe it is best to provide the ice they need right here at our rinks. Sunshine Coast Skate Club and Sunshine Coast Minor Hockey have been working with regional district recreation staff to develop return to play safety plans that are in alignment with facility reopening plans. We want to thank the staff for their work and the communication so far.
Since the Provincial Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture directed the sports sector to Via Sport back in March, we have been participating in regular video conferences and meetings and staying current as the plans to return to sport have evolved. Our national and provincial sports organisations have released sport-specific guidelines, which have allowed us as local sports organisations to develop our safety plans. Our local plans incorporate the guidance from our governing bodies, as well as the successful practices we have seen employed by facilities that are currently opening. A tremendous investment has been made to ensure that when we return, we will be ready to do so safely. We will present our return to play plans to our membership and reinforce them with town hall style meetings to respond to any questions, as well as provide orientation sessions for our program volunteers. It is essential that our measures and facility plans are well understood and adhered to by everyone. Once again, local volunteers have risen to the call and are ready to provide what is required for our children and our community. The Sunshine Coast Skating Club received the guidelines you'll see in front of you right now when we started booking ice at the Planet Ice facility in Coquitlam over a month ago. The slide is a decent compilation of points made in our BCYK section return to play document that's included in the presentation package. In addition to the points covered here, we have ensured there is no physical contact, no face touching, a 2-meter distance from each other on the ice at all times. Skaters are not permitted to touch any of the equipment, including the music player, as we have one designated person only, as well as an adult supervisor to ensure physical distancing and traffic flow rules are followed. As our skaters have already returned to play, we have had a chance to test drive the guidelines and protocols, and they work well. They have been effective in their objectives, as there have not been any outbreaks associated with the return to ice, which for some clubs has been 8 weeks now. Our club has a clear illness policy, a health screening questionnaire that is completed every day, waivers, a player record form to allow us to keep track of who is in the facility, an outbreak plan, and strict guidelines on sanitization practice.
Now I'd like to direct your attention to the documents that were provided in the agenda packet in Annex A, in particular the Minor Hockey Health and Safety Protocol. Hockey Canada has confirmed that there will be a COVID-19 specific section included in the annual safety training, which is mandatory for every team in Canada. One of BC Hockey's requirements is to identify a communications officer to help guide the associations through its restart plan and keep members informed around processes and necessary updates. We have recruited Brenda Rowe, who is a longtime minor hockey volunteer and a registered nurse at Seashell Hospital, and who recently helped to establish the Sunshine Coast Respiratory Clinic. Brenda has reviewed our plan, offered some advice, and sent it to our medical health officer, Dr. Jeff McKee, for review, who provided a very positive feedback. Few questions that came forward will easily be answered by the facility reopening plan, which we heard some details of last night. This document is based on the conditions that we're seeing today, and measures will change as the circumstances improve. Ongoing dialogue with the SCRD rec staff will allow us to adapt to what will likely be a dynamic set of precautions.
In closing, we would like to highlight 3 main points. Firstly, our organisations are ready to return to the ice in their communities as anticipated on August the 4th. We feel confident this can be done safely. Our commitment as far as ice bookings remains the same as it did when we confirmed permits for August and the shoulder season back in March. Secondly, we believe there is a need now more than ever for youth to return to sports, as they are so essential to their physical, mental, social, and emotional well-being. Thirdly, we care deeply about the safety of our youth, families, and community, and are committed to working with SCRD staff in ensuring all facility requirements are followed. We believe it's safer for our community to reduce our travel footprint and remain close to home. It's also important, we feel, to support our local businesses as they rebuild and recover from the financial impact and keep our dollars in our community.
And finally, we have a request of the board. We recognize that the recreation staff has a great deal of work ahead of them in order to get the facilities back open. And we are asking the board of directors to give staff the direction they need to proceed with preparations that would allow them to reopen in time for our ice programming, which is scheduled to commence on August 4th. Thank you all very much for your time, and we're happy to take any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for being here today. Just before we go to questions, I had one. What is your guys' plan should conditions worsen? We're talking about a possible second wave coming into fall, things of that nature. Do you have plans or contingencies for that possibility?
I'll take that one. What we've seen in the facilities that opened earlier is that they had strict restrictions that have changed a little bit. It opened up as conditions improved. So our plan that we show is in VS Sports Phase 2 measures, which may very well be into Phase 3 and recommending more relaxed measures by the beginning of August. But the idea is that then we could move back to Phase 2, or we could move back to earlier measures if that's what the appropriate thing is to do. So we're starting off very cautiously, and you know, it's going to be a dynamic target here, I think.
All right. Director Seegers, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. So I have a son who coaches hockey in ringette in Calgary. And earlier, there were some guidelines that were sent out, and they're much more stringent than what you have here. And I understand that, you know, we're at a different place now. For example, one of the requirements was that children come to the rink with their equipment on, including skates, wearing skate guards. Parents and guardians were not allowed in. You came 15 minutes before, and you could come and pick them up, but that was it. So, you know, given what's happened, there's been a bit of relaxation in that, given our numbers aren't as high. But I understand those can change, you know, to Director Toth's question. There's different things that can change as things happen.
I can speak to that one, Darnelda. I mean, I think it's really important that we all remember that these are evolving documents, and they will be forever changing until we get to the end of this pandemic. So flexibility and is going to be of the utmost importance for all of us as facility organizers, as association organizers. Our members are going to have to understand that the rules today may not be the same as the rules in September, and vice versa. So I think we are very clear that things are going to change. And I mean, we all are hoping that they continue to improve, but the hard reality is we may be going back into an earlier stage come late fall.
Thank you.
For sure. Directors, Director Hiltz?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. Yeah, challenging times to move all this forward. So you've been talking with other jurisdictions, other facility operators. So I'm kind of wondering what you're hearing about the additional expenses that facilities are incurring in terms of extra staffing for monitoring and cleaning. Are you hearing fees are increasing? Are there COVID surcharges? What have you heard about how the extra costs for returning to play is happening and being paid for in other areas, whether that's a private facility or a public facility?
Well, I have I've heard in the report out of City of Delta when they announced they have the reopening of their Tilbury Ice and the subsequent opening of their other facilities, they recognized that there would be have an impact on their budget when they made their announcement. And you know, in reality, it's going to be it's going to have an impact, especially in the early phases, on our budget as well. So it's going to be, we recognize that it's going to be extra challenging for us to put on our programs, and you know, our members are going to get less for what they pay for. We understand that, but it's what we have to do, and the only alternative is not, you know, we need that to provide them with this, and so that's just the reality of the situation.
And the Sunshine Coast Skating Club agrees with minor hockey on that front as well. We're willing to commit to the amount of ice that we did back in March when we were looking at these permits before this happened. So we will continue to commit to the amount of ice that we booked. And, you know, right now there has been a huge impact on our families because we've been traveling to Coquitlam. We have a large number of our skaters right now on the island. So they're paying for, you know, not only the ice, but obviously Airbnbs and cost of living away. So, you know, having the ice in our community also will reduce the haves and have-nots by at least making it affordable for as many people to return to sport as possible, rather than just a few who are able to commit to traveling elsewhere.
Director McMahon, I see your hand, but before I go to you, Director Ties is having some connectivity issues, so he just posted a couple questions in the chat here. I'm just going to grab one of them. And you sort of touched on it a little bit, Stuart, but these guidelines, how are they going to affect your scheduling? I mean, obviously you need to leave gaps between groups, things like that.
Yes, so our scheduling, we anticipate there's going to be an extended break between ice times for additional cleaning, and we will need to adapt our coaching techniques to you know, our practice plans will need to, you know, avoid certain contact situations. So Hockey Canada again has come forward with a number of a booklet of how to run drills that maintain large amounts of distance, and so that's you know, a big impact on us is going to be, we're going to need to call on our volunteers even more, because we will be assigning an ambassador for every session to make sure every member that comes in the building is aware and has all the documentation is in place to follow our plan.
And I can speak to that a bit more too. The impact of you know, that extended break between ice bookings will really mean that typically with minor hockey, an ice time is 1 hour and 15 minutes for Atom to midget. For practice times, that time is now going to be reduced to a 60-minute ice time. So those coaches are going to have to come up with a shorter practice plan, but at the end of the day, we're getting our youth on the ice for 1 hour, which is, you know, a heck of a lot better than the alternative. So that's the key importance here.
And I assume the skating club is a similar sort of scenario, right?
Yeah, the skating club will be revamping our schedule a bit in regards to this, because we're not. It's a little bit different than hockey, but.
Okay, Director McMahon.
Sorry, I was just drawing attention to Director Tice's comments.
Okay, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. There's several different restart programs, so this might be more of a staff question. Is the relationship between the various restarts? You got the facility restart, the SCRD restart, the hockey restart. Which one takes precedent, and where does the health officer fit into? Like, who says go that all of these plans are going to do what we want them to do? Like, I don't know how all these little plans fit together. If anyone could help me with that, that would be terrific.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Chair. The short answer to the director's question is they all have to play nicely together and need to be coordinated. And to build on a point the delegation made, good communication, flexibility, and continuous learning have served us well to get us to this point, which is close to having everything ready to go. And if we continue that, staff are confident that we can make all those things work nicely together. And in terms of the role of public health, our public health officers have been very gracious with their time and advice and have offered to continue to support with that advice as we go forward. Thank you.
Director Hiltz, did you have a follow-up or? Okay. Another question from Andreas, and this one's totally for staff. Is there any liability on the SCRD if guidelines are not properly followed?
Well, that's an interesting question, and the regional district has been talking with the Municipal Insurance Association and others about that. This is a new world, so we're figuring it out. The flow of approvals for the various plans that Director Hiltz mentioned are designed to assist all the parties with managing their own liability. And so the return to sport plan that the delegation user groups will develop will be approved by their governing body, not by SCRD. And that helps with keeping everybody in their lane. But ultimately, good plans in place and everybody ensuring that they're communicating and addressing problems as soon as we learn about them will help with managing liability. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Directors, do you have any other questions? GM Hall, we've got a report coming forward sometime this month regarding facilities.
That's right, Chair. At the Corporate and Administrative Services meeting in 2 weeks, staff will have a report about restart for a variety of the specific services that were identified at the earlier financial update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Recognizing that there is good communication between the user groups and our staff at this time, hopefully that information will be taken into account with the report that comes forward. Any last questions for our delegation? No? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Yes?
Is there any opportunity for, or any direction really, and maybe this is a question for staff, is there anything that you guys can help them to move forward more quickly? And that's to do with my specific request there about allowing them to move forward, because every week seems like a big block of time right now with that August coming so quickly.
Okay. I don't know that the directors are going to necessarily want to move anything forward today with the report coming in 2 weeks, but I will ask GM Hall if there's anything he would look for from us today.
Thank you, Chair. Well, staff are working all out on restart preparations with the idea that pending direction from the board and crossing the T's and dotting the I's on our plans. And we know that all of our user groups are working through that same process as well, that we will be ready to meet the needs and expectations of our patrons and our user groups. And the milestone of that report in a couple of weeks fits into that path towards a restart that certainly could include ice in August. Thanks.
So the one last comment is I think that the pressure is on us as organizations to inform our members of whether or not we will have programming in place for August 4th. And so we were looking for some clear information that the ICE facilities either will or will not be opening. I know as registrar, it's important for me to get registration open, but as members and families, they're wanting to know, are they staying on the coast for August, or are they looking for alternative ice in different communities? So I hope that you can understand that we feel, under the pressure of sharing information with our over 500 families between the both organizations.
I know that it's discussed in a later report that staff have been doing the maintenance and the upkeep on our facilities, but I don't want us to rush into anything prematurely. Director Seegers, I see your hand.
Thank you. I understand where you're coming from. As parents, as people running a program, and the impact on your members. As you can probably recognize, this has been huge for the regional district financially as well. And part of what we're grappling with is the financial piece. So staff are putting all of those pieces together as well, because we need to make sure that the community isn't not just your people, right? But the whole community is behind all the decisions that we make. So I know that staff are doing their best to try and get information. I'm sure they'll share with you what they can. We cannot guarantee at this point August 4th. That's where we're at. We will be able to give you more information once we have that meeting. I believe it's on the 23rd of this month. And prior to that, I'm sure GM Hall will share with you what he can and how their plans are progressing. I'm sorry that's not enough for you, but that's all we can do at this time.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Sorry we don't have an easy answer for you guys and your organizations. But hopefully the communication lines with staff and your organizations helps to provide you some more information ahead of that corporate and administrative services meeting. So yeah.
Thanks a lot for having us. Usually July is a time when the old minor hockey email is pretty silent, but it sure hasn't been this year, boy. So I'm monitoring that all the time, because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of work being done right now. So please feel free to reach out at any time, staff or anybody who wants to get a hold of us.
Great. Thank you very much. IT, if we can move our delegation out, that would be great. And next up, we have Annex B, Development Variance Permit Application. We've got Lorna and Martin to bring in. Sorry, I just want to make sure everybody's here properly. Before we get started, I understand that staff would like to speak on this first.
Thank you, Chair. Staff received a request from the applicant to defer consideration of this item yesterday. And as well, late yesterday, a date typo was discovered by staff in the statutory notification used by SCRD. And the typo poses a risk to the process and could impact all that are involved here. And so for these reasons, staff recommend that the committee defer the matter to a future committee meeting. And staff will address the typo and work with the applicant to have the item come back as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Lee?
Yeah, I'd be happy to make a motion to defer the development various permit application DVP 00054 at 4355 Lake Road until the next Planning and Community Development Committee meeting, which I think is September 2020. Would staff think that's the appropriate motion?
Thank you. Yes, Director, that would be fine. Staff will, just saying a future committee meeting may be appropriate. Yeah, if there's, staff understand that time is of the essence, and in the interest of providing the best service possible, would look to the earliest available opportunity. Thank you.
Doesn't necessarily have to come back to a PCD. It could come to another committee meeting for sure. Director Lee?
Yeah, let's make those changes to it.
Okay, so I have that motion. Is there a seconder for that? Okay. Before we call the vote on it, I just wanted to recognize that Lorna and Martin, thank you for coming today. We're going to vote on this, and then if either of you would like to say a few words, you're welcome to, and we'll make sure that you do come back for that when it does come back to us. All those, or any questions or discussion on the motion? No. All those in favor? Rural directors? Thank you. So Lorna, since you're first on the menu, did you want to say a few words today? You're muted.
I just want to thank the committee and the chair for deferring this until a future meeting so that we can have all the correct information together. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you again for being here today. Martin, did you want to say a few words? You're also muted.
I'd like to, first of all, thank the SCRD and the staff and this committee for all the hard work that have gone into this very complex file. I want to raise the issue of the stop work orders. I don't understand what is happening with the stop work orders. I know there was discussion previously about trying to put more teeth into the actually enforcing it. It sounds like there's been only 2 tickets, infractions, tickets rendered, but work continues on a daily basis. And I think the longer the work continues, the more complex the matter becomes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Our staff, I think, will follow up unless they wanted to say anything specifically.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. We will make sure that you know when it is coming forward again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, moving on to Annex C. Sorry, let me get my agenda here. Planning and Community Development Department 2020 Q2 report. GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair. So every quarter, the Planning and Community Development Department provides a summary of work done in the prior quarter, and staff would be pleased to answer any questions on the information provided here.
Okay, and just for simplicity's sake, so we don't jump around too much, we're going to go sort of block by block. So does anybody have any questions in the Planning and Development Division section? Director McMahon?
Sorry, I'm trying to decide what section I'm in. I'm on page 206. Am I in the right place?
You are. Good question. Yes?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Thanks. My question was, I was curious as to how many submissions we received on the SDR public hearing, and I had another question about that too.
Steph?
Thank you, Chair. So staff don't have the exact count handy, but are preparing the record of the public hearing, which will have that information in it, and that will be coming to an upcoming committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Follow up,
Yeah.
Director McMahon?
Well, I'm guessing there were lots. I was just curious as to where we are about enforcement strategies for the current bylaw.
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. So for the current bylaw, our bylaw enforcement remains complaint driven, and staff respond to contraventions of the zoning bylaw accordingly. And there has been, we've gone through some staff changes in bylaw, and I understand there are some new resources added to that work group, and that will assist us as we head into the summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh,
and
Dean?
And yeah, in a round of good news, we were successful in recruiting a new full-time bylaw staff member who will be starting, I believe, next Wednesday with orientation. So it's great to have some additional resources coming to the bylaw department as well. We've had some discussions with the bylaw department on putting together a bit of a lunch and learn session for the board, hopefully upcoming fairly shortly as well, and they really look forward to that.
Thank you for that. Director Ties?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my question is more of a general nature, and I've been trying to get an answer for this one for a little while. Asking about OCPs. Currently, there's none under review. I would, when we first got our orientation, somebody said that, oh, well, we try to do one every 2 years, and I'm just wondering when the next OCP review is scheduled and which community is it, and then what is the schedule thereafter?
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. So there's no current plan or approved resources to undertake review or renewal of an OCP. Although I would note that the pre-work for renewal of the Twin Creeks OCP was completed a couple of years ago. And it's possible that the regional growth research, which is an upcoming item, work on our zoning bylaws or work on watershed governance, will point to priorities within our current OCPs to be addressed, or to new planning approaches that we might look at. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I just lost my participants list here. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I could get a memory refresh on the Housing Needs Assessment Steering Committee. I don't remember exactly what that was, or is, sorry. That's on page 205.
Sure. So this is one of several regional or intergovernmental collaborative projects that are underway. And this one is being led by the town of Gibsons as the project lead, with involvement from the other local governments on the coast. And with the support of a grant, a housing needs assessment is being undertaken. And I believe that the consultant's work has just wrapped up, and we can expect a report to be forthcoming. Thanks.
Thank you. I remember now.
All right. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks again for the report. My question is about COVID. We took a pause, built up some pending demand. The pending demand is about to be released. It seems like the numbers look like a quick bounce back. So are staff predicting a surge in applications coming forward, and how are they expecting to manage that? And what can the public expect in terms of processing time for the applications? Like whether this year would be last year a predictor of this year, or they need to be more patient, or just if you could say anything about your crystal ball into the future and this pent-up demand that's going to be released in the next weeks.
I see that Mr. Patey has unmuted himself, so I don't know, GM Hall, if you want to take a break and let him address it, or
Sounds
you
great.
want to take it?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. The number of applications has been steadily increasing in the past 2 months or so, and the number of inquiries, both email and telephone, have been increasing dramatically. So we anticipate that we will receive an increased number of applications moving forward. We recently have gone through the process of recruiting a planner one to backfill a position that has been vacant. And we hope to have an announcement on that moving forward, which will help to increase our planning department capacity to be able to handle those applications. We also are looking to, in future, make some process and operational changes in the department to open up some capacity to be able to manage the long-range goals of some projects coming forward, as well as the high number of applications we have on file and hope to receive.
Great, thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. As if you don't have enough on your plate, I was wanting to see where we're at with regards to the regional growth strategy. I know that that's something the regional district's taking on, and I know that it has, it's going to be key for all of us in moving forward in guiding the direction that we move. And I know you have very full plates. So I'm just wondering, do we have any idea where that's at right now? Is it even on your radar yet?
GM Hall.
It's very. Thank you for the question, Director. It is very much on staff's radar, and as part of the 2020 budget, research resources were approved, and staff are prepared to see that through in 2020. For all the reasons that the manager stated, that will remain a challenge, and we know that that's the same for our local government partners on the coast. But the staff would fully agree with the director's comment. The importance of that work can't be understated. Thank you.
And if I just may add to that, part of this is, as Dave was just saying, looking to increase our planning staff to increase capacity, but also looking at realigning some of the work of our planning department to further increase capacity to address super high priority issues like the regional growth strategy. And as Dave was mentioning, we've been recruiting for a planner one, and one of the challenges we weren't sure the level of which we would be facing during this COVID pandemic is our ability to recruit qualified applicants to positions. And what we've found, and there's not been too many happy surprises over the last few months, but one happy surprise is that our postings for several of our positions, including the bylaw one we just mentioned, and this one as well, yielded many very qualified applicants. And talking to C. Shelton Gibson's, they've actually been experiencing similar things where despite COVID, we're getting good applicants for our positions. And really encouraging as we're trying to fill out our roster with qualified people so we can move forward with some of these priority initiatives.
I challenge the assertion that it's despite COVID. I think it might be partly because of COVID, people wanting to get out of the cities and into the smaller areas. Director Lee?
Yes, I agree with you, Director Toth. That's probably the reason. I have a question again on the, I see that we're updating zoning bylaw 310. I know zoning bylaw 337 needs updating to match the 2018 OCP update. Will that be scheduled anytime soon, or is it still unknown when it'll go forward?
GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. So staff have touched on this one in an appropriately vague and non-committal way, I think, when the question has come up before. But having included input from Area A in some of the consultation that was done early in the renewal of the Bylaw 310 process, even though zoning bylaw 310 doesn't apply to Area A, and hearing that there was some commonality in the both the challenges and the opportunities related to zoning in Area A that were similar to the rest of the coast. Staff have kept in the back of our minds the opportunities to take the learnings from the 310 renewal exercise and look at how they can be applied to bylaw 337, be that through changes to that bylaw, amendments, or total renewal, or even investigating further the possibility of a unified bylaw. And staff keep it vague because at this point we're still working through the process, and there's more that we need to test with the community and with our regular users of the bylaws as we move forward in the project. And so we don't want to prescribe a way forward here, but staff hear the director's question, and we hear similar questions from the development community and property owners. And so we're looking at what the best thing for the community is, and recommendations to that effect will be brought forward as part of the 310 project. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Lee, did you have a follow-up, or are you good? Your hand is still up.
No, I was busy listening instead of looking for the button.
Director Hill.
I think I got an answer, and that is maybe later this year we'll know. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, you could get them to give you another vague and non-committal answer if you'd like, but
no, I was just wondering when I have to ask again.
Later this year sounds right. Yeah.
Chair, staff are absolutely not trying to be evasive. It's all about respect for the process and respect for the people that the bylaw serves, and for the board's discretion to direct staff to do things. But we're thinking in the same direction. Thank you.
For sure. And you also don't want to fence yourself into a corner where somebody can come up to you and say, you said that it was going to be done, at this time. So totally recognize that.
Well, fences are regulated with zoning. Yeah.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I'm looking at page 209, the pie charts, and I'm just looking for an update. I see the SIGD is leading the way in terms of revenue, and what's happening? This doesn't seem to be a common occurrence. So, what's being built in SIGD?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. We have both our chief building official in our virtual gallery who may be able to offer more information, and I recognize that Director Paul is with us today too. But in general, there have been a number of large projects of large value that are represented in that pie chart. Thanks.
Is that sufficient, Director Hiltz, or do you want further clarification?
It's more on the commercial side or the residential side. I see building going up at the foot of Field Road. That would be factor into that bundle of permits, or nothing too much more? Just larger projects are going on, and that's generating the revenue. I think that's sufficient for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Ties?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the, I don't know if it's probably not an easy question to answer, but what the amount of applications corrected for that unusual amount of development going on would be, and whether it's considerably lower than 2019.
You mean taking out the SIGD component?
Yeah, or just going with a sort of a maybe 2019 value of SIGD development, because it looks like this is putting a considerable bump, and I'm just curious as to what the development's been on the rest of the coast during COVID.
Do staff have an answer to that?
Staff don't have a detailed answer, but would a general comment, and I'll ask our chief building official if he has further comments to make. But a general comment would be, it feels like in every quarter there's an anomalous project that comes in, something significant or unique or high value that has an impact. So normalizing data is difficult.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? No. Okay. It's going to touch real quickly on ports and docks on page 210. Any questions on ports and docks? Director Ties.
I'm sorry, I'm on page 212. I'm not sure where we're at exactly.
210, ports and docks division.
Okay.
Real quick.
Never mind. I'll wait.
Okay. Director Pratt.
Thank you. I had my first opportunity. I know you're not to see the Vaucroft dock. It looks fantastic, and they're very happy with the new dock. So I just wanted to put that there. I know it was dealt with in a previous last year, and it's not mentioned here, but just for the ports and docks division, the dock looks great on Vaucroft. So thank you.
All right. No hands raised, no questions. Moving on to facilities services division, starting on page 211, and also recreation facilities going through to 213.
Yes, my question is, I saw that the Gibson's pool is not heated and circulated. Okay, occasionally there wasn't any kind of information on the Seashell Aquatic Center, and wondering what state it is in regarding to COVID related cost saving measures and that sort of stuff.
GM Hall.
Thank you for the question. So as part of our regular annual maintenance, the pool was drained, repairs were made to the pool basin, and was refilled before stage 2 water conservation measures were in place. And we always try to coordinate that timing such that we're doing it while water's still flowing over the dam and we're not taking away from community drinking water supply. And minimal heating and circulation is being done there just to protect the asset, but it's not being operated to a state where you would want to go swimming. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Do directors have any other questions in recreation and facility services? No, I would have expected more questions in here. Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. And with respect to the recreation facilities, I noticed because of COVID, some of your work is ahead of schedule, but I'm assuming also because of COVID, there is work that's behind schedule. And I know we have this other report coming up down the road with respect to opening the facilities and what we're looking at. But I'm just wondering, a date that was discussed earlier, is that even potential with work scheduled and where we're behind and ahead?
Jim Hall?
Thank you, Chair. I'll generalize and say that all of our maintenance work is on track, and that there aren't maintenance related items that would hold up reopening facilities. And in fact, both the Seashell Aquatic Center and the Gibsons and District Aquatic Facility have remained open with essential service to vulnerable populations for showers and washrooms. And so, pending completion of restart planning and direction from the board, we are ready to restart services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any other hands up. I guess we'll move on to the Parks Division between pages 214 and 219, which includes cemeteries. And I don't see any other hands up, so I'm going to ask my question first. On 214, under cemeteries, it mentions that 69 plots are being added to Seaview. Are those full burial or those cremation? And then the follow-up question is, what sort of capacity for expansion do we have at Seaview? Looking at the asset management, and I'm not intending to die anytime soon, but how much space do we have in Seaview?
Thank you for the question, Chair. I believe that those are full burial spots, and in terms of capacity, there's quite a bit of capacity for niches, and that's included in the current cemetery plan. So that's for inurnment of cremated remains, and that responds well to market trends in cemetery services. There is additional capacity in the current plan for Seaview Cemetery, and that's multiple years of capacity. There is also pending, there is a business plan for our cemetery service, and that's for the service as a whole, not just for Seaview Cemetery, that will consider both our available space supply and market trends, and the financial sustainability of the service. And staff expect that project will be initiated in 2020. Thanks.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Right. I just wanted to note on page 215 that Shirley Macy Park was again moved to Area E. I welcome it. I had Soames Hill Park last time. Kind of cool.
Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, I know there's been some talks with the Coast Mountain Bike Association about the pump track, and I'm just wondering if there's any news there.
GM Hall.
Thank you for the question, Chair. I apologize, I don't have an update on that, other than I am aware that our park superintendent met with community representatives to continue discussions. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. On page 215, under Roberts Creek, I think this is in the right area. The last item talks about test well drilling exploration for a sustainable non-potable water source at Cliff Gilker. So I know that this was a plan that staff were looking at, given potential water shortages each year, is to try and find wells that could be used to maintain the parks. So commend you for doing that. And I'm wondering if there are other parks that you're going to be looking at doing this at as well.
GM Hall.
Thanks for the question, and thank you for bringing it up, Director. At the time this report was drafted, we knew that drilling was going to happen, but we didn't have results. I'm pleased to share that the preliminary results found water, and we're waiting for the hydrology report. So this was supported with both budget approved parks budget resources and a small infrastructure grant, and the value of the work that was approved was just enough to do this one site. And Cliff Gilker was prioritized based on available hydrological data. Based on the experience of this, and as part of reporting further results, staff will consider whether other sites might be appropriate. If I recall correctly, the second most significant site was in Connor Park. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. That's good news. That's great news. And I know that Seashelt's had some preliminary talks about possibly doing something like that as well. Director Seegers?
Yeah, just to follow up, I think this is really good, and it really ties in with the Better Fields Committee. And yes, they're not doing organized sports yet, but they will be. And it really damages our fields when we can't water them during the summer. So whatever you do here is a benefit to the whole community. So thank you.
Director Ties.
That's a great segue into organized outdoor sports. Wondering if there's a timeline as to when we can start offering those again. And, I'm thinking like ultimate frisbee and soccer and such things may be fairly COVID friendly, as long as you don't go slide tackling into people.
Jim Hull.
Thank you, Chair. Also a good prompt, because things have changed since this report was drafted. So where we're at now is playgrounds are open, and that was a coordinated opening with all local governments on the coast, and signage is posted there. We've also opened the spray park at Shirley Macy, which is most definitely in Area F. Again, with signage, and that was done with coordination with public health officials. And our fields are open for casual use, and we've been working in the last week or so with user groups to get their return to sport plans confirmed, and to adjust schedules to best accommodate smaller groups and the compressed calendar that some sport groups have. And we're very close to reopening fields for bookings. You asked about timeline, and I'm cautiously optimistic that in the next 2 weeks we'll be back to our new normal with booked events taking place on the fields. And would like to thank all of the user groups for their communication and coordination and patience and support as we work through this together to ensure that we're doing it in a safe way that moves us forward and not back. Thanks.
Which sort of segues into a question that I've now got. On page 218, we talk about the community halls, and the bookings for Q2 are obviously dismal. Is there any discussion or contemplation on when we might start offering bookings of the halls again? And perhaps I missed it in the report.
Thank you, Chair. And no, you didn't miss it, because this is all work that is happening as we speak and has been really going gangbusters in the last couple of weeks. But halls are next. There's a few more complexities with more things like touch surfaces in halls that need to be worked through, but the next thing after we get our fields back online will be community halls. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'd encourage you or your staff, whoever's in charge of that piece, to reach out to District of Sechelt staff, because we've had to look at that with regards to our facilities as well. And I believe that they have all of those processes in place. So, you know, it might save you some time to get in touch with them.
All right. Thank you for that. The last section here, assuming there are no more questions, I see no hands. Recreation and community partnerships, pages 220 and 221. Director McMahon. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Ties was first.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around activities such as like pickleball in the arena and such things. So pickleball seems to me like a fairly good sport to be playing in COVID.
GM Hall.
Well, far be it from me to disagree with the director's position on pickleball. Staff are working all out on restart, and the same plans, the same protocols are required for all types of sport, and certainly there are some that are easier to adapt to a low contact, no contact situation. I would note as just one example that I believe that the VIA Sport guidelines for racket sports do say that every player should attend with their own ball, and only the person serving should touch that ball. I mean, there are considerations for even the lowest contact sports, and we will have all of those in place for our own programs and work with our user groups to make sure that they are set up for success with their own return to sport plans.
Thank you. Director McMahon.
Yes, on page 220, there's reference to the staff operating the showers and washrooms at the two aquatic facilities. And glad to see that we've got funding for that. I'm just wondering what the demand is now that more facilities are opening up in the community. Do we still have that need?
GM Hall.
Thank you for the question. We have Manager of Recreation Services, Graham Dawn, in the meeting today, and he may be able to provide a sense of trends there.
Thank you, Ian. So I can provide the numbers each of the facilities. So right now, up at the Pender Harbor Government Wharf, we're averaging about 80 to 100 people a day. So June saw just over 1,200 visitations, so very worthwhile. At the Gibson's District Aquatic Facility, the numbers are a little lower. We're at about 4 to 5 people a day on average, with a total of 40 people for the month of June. And then at the Sechelt Aquatic Center, it's averaging about 6 to 7 a day, with the outlier being Saturdays, where we seem to have quite a few members of the public coming when they're out and about at the markets, things like that. And we saw 224 people at SAC, so the Sechelt Aquatic Center, for the month of June. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. No further questions on that section. Does anybody have any questions on the report overall that they forgot to ask? No. All right. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to Annex D, Half Moon Bay Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw and Zoning Amendment Bylaw. Supplementary recommendations. Good morning, Yuli.
Good morning, Chair. So this report provides supplementary recommendations with respect to the second reading of the bylaws and public hearing. Planning staff have discussed the bylaw with relevant departments and determined that the proposed amendment to the Half Moon Bay OCP is consistent with the 2020 to 2024 financial plan and the 2011 solid waste management plan of the SCRD. And so it is also recommended that the delegation of a chair and an alternate chair for the public hearing to be determined. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I understand it's not in the recommendations yet, but I understand that there is also a date set for the public hearing, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It is set to be July the 21st.
21st at 7 p.m. Thank you very much. Director Pratt?
Thank you. So if this is going to be, if the public hearing is going to be set for July 21st, we'll need to also have the, have this moved to board this afternoon as well.
Okay. First of all, we need a chair and alternate chair for the public hearing. I'm happy to participate in some role if somebody else wants some role. Director Pratt?
As is tradition, I'm certainly available to be the alternate chair for this evening, for this public hearing.
Okay. Unless anybody else wants to chair it, I'm willing to chair it. No? All right. I guess I shouldn't have spoken first. Okay, so we've got the Director Toth would be the delegated as the chair, and Director Pratt delegated as the alternate chair for the public hearing to consider Half Moon Bay OCP amendment bylaw and zoning amendment bylaw. Director Ties.
Yeah, I just, do we have the wording that it's July 21st and at 7 p.m. in there?
It's not in there. I suppose it can be added into the recommendation, delegated as the alternate chair for the public hearing scheduled for July 21st at 7 p.m. to consider and the remainder of the recommendation. Director Ties?
Yep, that sounds good to me.
You're going to move those recommendations then?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, how about a further and that this recommendation be forwarded to board this afternoon?
Yeah, that I thought we'd already added that, but yes, also that one. Yeah. Okay.
Director Lee?
I was planning on attending the meeting, of course. I was wondering if it's going to be the same similar issue we had with the our last public hearing. Did we want to consider multiple vice chairs? I was interested in Donna's thoughts on this. She's
Director McMahon.
Yeah, this is not an occasion that I would have thought it would apply. I'm going to back up and explain this just for anybody who was not present in our email thread, but our short-term rentals public hearing was a long and arduous event. And we also had training in advance of that public hearing. So each director put in at least 5 hours on this, and none of us were paid except for the chair and vice chair. And my feeling was that when we are dealing with an issue that is coast-wide and is of, great community interest, that all of us are pretty much obligated to attend. It would look very strange if I didn't attend and represent my area on something like that. So that I thought that all of the directors should be paid in that instance. Whether this one would merit that or not is an interesting question, because the public hearing that we are looking at is for a development in Area B. It is not for a rural dynamic zone, which is a completely different, discussion. So, yes, and to back up again, sorry, the suggestion was by our CAO that a way to deal with this would be to appoint lots of vice chairs so that we would all get paid for our participation. But I don't really think that that approach is merited in this particular case. That's my personal opinion. Other directors might feel differently.
Got a thumbs up from Director Ties. It's true. I mean, this isn't an issue that really only affects the Half Moon Bay area. Certainly directors are welcome to attend, but your participation is not necessary. So I had a mover for the motion. I need a seconder from the rural directors. Seconded. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the motion? No. Rural directors only. All those in favor? All right. Opposed? Would you like that recorded, Director McMahon? Okay. Director Seegers?
Just a comment, question. Was the part about moving it to the board included in that? I missed that.
Yes, it was. All right. And Director McMahon, sorry, you did want that opposition recorded? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Moving on to Annex E. Sunshine Coast Tourism request for letters of support. GM Hall. And I will bring Paul into the meeting in case we have any questions for him.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is a follow-up to the request received from Sunshine Coast Tourism in January and in March of 2020. Sunshine Coast Tourism has written to SCRD looking for a letter of support for renewal of the MRDT at 2% and for the online accommodation platform funding guidelines. Staff have done a brief review of the information provided. Note that it appears to address questions raised by the committee at earlier meetings and recommend issuance of the letters to support Sunshine Coast Tourism's next steps in approaching Destination BC for approval. And as the chair noted, Mr. Paul Kamen from Sunshine Coast Tourism is in the meeting as a resource to the committee and can answer questions related to the request. Thank you.
All right. Whole bunch of hands here just before we go to that. I'm going to jump in as chair's prerogative here and take the first question. Tourism BC is the overall approving body for the MRDT and the online accommodation platform. Other than the letters of support from the local governments, do they have mechanism for other members of the community, other affected parties to submit letters of either support or opposition as part of this process? And perhaps that's a question for Mr. Kamen directly.
That's a good question. I'm not aware of that. I've just been following the guidelines that DBC has set forth, which was to get approvals from both regional districts.
Okay, thank you. Director McMahon.
Yeah, this may be my failure to read the report correctly, but I could not find anywhere in there how long the renewal is for. What is the term of the renewal?
Are you referring to the MRDT?
Yeah.
It is for 5 years.
It would be helpful to have that in the report just to help the public along.
All right. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Thank you for answering the questions. And I know you also brought these to the district Seashelt and are in receipt of our letter already now as well. I'll move the recommendations as presented.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Great. Director Ties, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just kind of second guessing some of the things here. And one of the things is I'm not sure that the accommodation providers should be the ones calling the shots to raise a tax on themselves. I think we need better data for tourism. We need better infrastructure for tourism. We need better transportation for tourism. We need more attractions for tourism. We need more variety in accommodation in tourism here on the coast. And there's lots of demand. I think there's the supply in general is lacking. So I think we need to invest in tourism in general, and collecting data and making business cases. And I think that a 3% MRDT is a good step in the right direction. Not to mention that we want to use some of that income to create affordable housing. So I don't think anybody booking a vacation is going to say we're going elsewhere because we have a $2 increase on the average room night. I personally disagree with leaving it at 2%. I think it should be raised to 3%, and those are my thoughts. I don't know if Paul has anything to say about that.
I appreciate your understanding and comments regarding destination development, because that has been the biggest pressure on my role, in that the bulk of the funds go towards marketing, which creates short-term demand, which we've been seeing increasing year over year. But we need to address some of these other issues. And that's part of why, when you look at the OAP, we had that discussion on how we would use some of those funds to address those concerns. In particular, in January, I funded a tourism economic impact study with a data analyst. And unfortunately, COVID hit right in the middle of trying to collect data from accommodation providers. So that whole process has gotten slowed down quite significantly, but that's the data you're looking for. And I'm trying to get it. That's why I need some of these funds to do that. Unfortunately, the move towards 3% was not supported by the bulk of the accommodators, who have to sign letters of support for this tax to be implemented. So unfortunately, we won't, and I agree, I mean, $2 on your bill is not going to make a big difference. But unfortunately, the accommodation sector was not supportive of the 3% move at this time. They did suggest that, if we recover properly, that they would be, looking towards 3% in the next renewal, which would be 5 years away from now. Right now, they're just trying to survive.
This is one of those occasions where, unfortunately, we can't force any taxes on anybody. They have to volunteer to participate in that. So, Director McMahon.
Yes, at the risk of being slightly off topic, since Mr. Kamen is in the room, last weekend on the coast seemed amazingly busy. The traffic was busy. The ferry terminal was chaos. So I have the feeling that we really bounced back for tourism. Is that your impression?
I 100% agree with you on that. And I will be coming back to you guys with a discussion around long-term fixes for this, because we got rolled back by BC Ferries. It took us 6 years to claw our way back to get a decent schedule, and we were seeing year-over-year increases in ferry traffic, and now we are set back with the deferment of the second vessel, deferment of all the terminal upgrades. So I'm kind of at a loss for how, in the short term, we obviously have to lobby ferries really hard to continue pushing for our schedule to bounce back to acceptable levels. But in the long term, we really need to consider what that means. And this fixed link may be the long-term solution for the coast, because if we have to fight ferries for the next 5 years just to get back to normal, that throttles our economy. And especially tourism and the experience that we're trying to promote and offer to people. Sunshine Coast is a beautiful place, but if you're stuck in a ferry terminal for 5 hours, it ruins your experience, and they show up on the coast angry. And that's not doing any of our businesses any favors. So,
thank you. Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of following along Director Ty's, comments, I think a 5-year term, set at 2% is, I appreciate, people are saying, oh, we're suffering because of COVID. But if you go and look on some of the online sites, whether the people have blocked themselves out because of COVID or they're booked, you can't really tell. But they're indicating that they don't have accommodation available, which I would suggest probably, looking at cars parked in front of Airbnbs that I'm aware of, I know they're busy. So locking it in for 5 years at 2%, I think is, with the goals, indicated by Director Taz and yourself, I think it's short-sighted. So, I'm certainly not prepared to support the 2% for 5 years. I think it should be a shorter term.
I appreciate your sentiment, but unfortunately, it's up to the accommodators to sign on the dotted line. And if they're not supportive of the 3%, there's not much we can do to force them to raise the tax. Getting support for them to support the tax alone is a process in itself. The good news is that with MRDT revenues have been going up year over year for the last 3 years, again, because the demand for the coast is very high, which means that there is more MRDT money, even at 2% coming in. So over the last 3 years, it's been increasing by about $20,000 every year. So there is a little more money rolling in, even at 2%. It's averaging about $350,000. But then you add the online accommodation platform money, that adds another $150,000 or $140,000 to the kitty. So that was the additional funding as well. So overall, there should be a little more money to be able to do things. And again, it's about properly deciding where to allocate the funding. Instead of putting 80% of it into marketing, we can start to look at other development projects and start to divide the money toward priority items, because the marketing, for the most part, we don't have to do a lot of marketing. The coast is very well known and very busy as it is, and the sentiment toward the coast is very high. We did a data study about the tourism sentiment on the coast, collecting data from online, and it showed the Sunshine Coast as a very popular destination. So we are riding a bit on that right now. But also to your comments regarding how busy it is this summer, you are correct. There are a lot of accommodators that have been booked solid for July and September, July, August, and a lot of people are coming to the coast. But you also have to recognize that our capacity has been reduced. The Lund Hotel is closed for the season. Desolation Sound Resort is closed for the season. There's a number of businesses that are literally not opening for the entire season. So the capacity has been reduced. So there's more people and less accommodation. So that's part of the situation.
I've got a bit of a speakers list here. I will remind everybody that we're only 5 letters into the alphabet. So if you can keep your comments or questions short and succinct. I see we've got a Sesame Street background in here in case you've got any problems with the alphabet. Director Hiltz?
I will be very quick. The online accommodator submit individual letters to you. So on the coast, there still isn't a online accommodators association. Like there is there anything like, I don't think there is, but is there?
If you're making reference to the letter that you may have received as correspondence, of which I have also received from a particular operator claiming to have an accommodation association. From my understanding, that's not an official one. It doesn't exist in a registry anywhere. So there is no official accommodation association on the Sunshine Coast.
Okay, Director Pratt.
Thank you. Just to follow up on a couple of comments that Paul made regarding supporting the tax and trying to get the accommodators on board. I've been part of this process before, and I'm just, if they've got the majority of the accommodators supporting the 2%, we don't want to mess with that right now, because when I was in tourism, I was part of that effort to that ultimately failed in getting the MRDT to this to our community the first time around. It's very difficult to get an agreement on that, and if we've got an agreement on the 2%, then let's look at that with the 3% possibility for the next time. I also want to say that there's with the COVID restriction or with COVID, there is a rest period that hoteliers have to follow for rooms. And there's I believe it's 3 hours between when one renter leaves before the next, before cleaners can even go in to clean. And some of our accommodators that are still open are actually going with a longer period of time just to ensure that they are protecting their staff. With COVID, we've also seen less staff availability. Like there's just less people available to work in the tourism sector, and less people feeling safe to actually work or even travel. And a lot of the BC ferries, I know in my role as a realtor, we're seeing a ton of day traffic coming up from Vancouver as well. So, which fits into our, our tourism needs, but it increases, there's less places for them to stay. And our bricks and mortar hotels are really suffering right now with these increased restrictions and less staff.
Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. H is for how will we organize the allocation of the OAP funds that are apparently coming our way? And I guess that's more of a board.
For point of clarity, in the report, it states that there's $30,000. That is an error. There is actually over $40,000, just for clarity.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor. This is voting all. Any further questions? No. All those in favor? Opposed? No. That's carried. Oh, Andreas or Director Ties, would you like that opposition recorded?
No, that's okay.
Okay, that passes. It's 11:02. Thank you, Paul, for being with us and answering our questions. We will let you depart the meeting now. It's 11:02. Do we want to take a break until 11:10? Just 8 minutes, and then we'll come back. All right. See you in 8 minutes. All right, welcome back, almost everybody. Moving on to Annex F, TELUS Telecommunications Tower in Roberts Creek, request for local government concurrence. Turning it over to you, Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this report provides information about the proposal for a new telecommunication tower to be located on the fire hall property in Roberts Creek. The purpose of the new facility is to improve wireless service to residents, businesses, and tourists in Roberts Creek. And the facility will improve the emergency communication service for the fire department. So staff recommend providing land use concurrence on this proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We do have Doug and Chad available to us from TELUS if we've got questions. This is voting rural directors only, but any questions from directors? Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to staff, and it's just essentially what is the benefit to the Sunshine Coast Regional District for having that tower? So what would it cost us to build that tower without the help from TELUS? And then also, do we have any idea as to what the ongoing agreement is, whether they're going to be paying rent or anything like that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Based on the information provided by the Protective Service, the SCRD will provide the land and TELUS cover the cost of the new tower, and both will get to use the facility. This will require SCRD to enter into a statutory right-of-way agreement, which will allow TELUS access to the tower. The cost to construct the tower will be approximately $500,000, and the rent for a facility will be about $15,000 per year. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Ties, I assume that answers your questions. All right. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I believe we're also looking at doing an emergency response system on the Sunshine Coast, which would also take advantage of this tower. Is that correct?
Who would like to take that? GM Hall?
Well, I'll take it, but unfortunately, I apologize, I don't have that information, and we don't have our Protective Services Manager with us in the meeting today, so I'm sorry.
That might be some information that can come forward later.
Director McMahon?
Yeah, without wanting to be flippant, I will point out that I have yet to hear a single complaint from somebody about having too much cell service. So I think, the opportunity to improve our emergency services response is terrific. And so I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 234.
All right. Is there a seconder for those recommendations? All right. Seconded. Director Ties?
Yeah, I just want to point out that there has been some concern in the community about the cell tower, whether it's through visual appeal, for visual appeal, as well as for the fact that some trees will have to get cut down to put the tower in place. And thirdly, and probably the most contentious part, being the radiation that does come from that tower. And I want to acknowledge that, and I have seen both the Facebook thread as well as some of the information that's gone around, and some people have contacted me directly, and I want. I've done some research into this myself to the extent that I could for a better description of my thoughts and feelings about this whole thing, do check my newsletter on that I just published a couple days ago. But in the meantime, I am going to put my faith in Health Canada, and that they continue to have the public's best interest at heart, hoping that they're not as influenced by public money as some of the public institutions in the United States might be. So with that, yes, I am seconding those recommendations, and I think this is a good addition, and it's a sort of a win-win for everyone.
Thank you for that. Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of further to what Director Ties was saying, this week at Gibson's Council in our communication, there was a concern about, cell towers, and, there seems to be concerns with respect to G5. On the other side, we have this huge demand because of the geography and topography of the Sunshine Coast for increased service. So I think, wherever possible, with communication providers, if they, so it doesn't come across that the fox is guarding the hen house, that, good information can be provided to the community from other sources than themselves. I would, put that out to them because, there is a concern about, the radiation that may or may not affect us, and it's a time will tell thing. But I think communication is really important in this area. That people do have concerns, and if from reliable sources these concerns can be placated. Because the demand, particularly with COVID, we've seen the strain on the communication system and the increased demand for it. So I think there needs to be some better communication coming out from the providers to put public concerns at rest.
All right. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor? Rural directors? All right, that's carried. Moving on to Annex G, provincial referral CRN 00111 for private moorage. Welcome, Julie, to the meeting.
Good morning, directors. This report is based on our referral from Flynn Road for the construction of a single moorage in Bargain Bay in electoral area A. SCRD does not have zoning over the water in this location, which means that SCRD comments at this time and our legislative authority are focused on the upland property. With that in mind, staff would like to note that the property is eligible for future subdivision. And so if this license is approved by the province and if future subdivision takes place, staff would like to recommend that the province requires a future review for strata moorage license at that time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Directors, Director Lee.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations as presented.
All right, is there a seconder for that? Rural directors? Seconded. Any questions, comments? Director Hiltz.
Thanks for the report. And further to the planner's comment about future subdivision and recommendation. So how does that stick to the property? How would that process unfold if it was going to be subdivided and to follow the SCRD's recommendations for a group moorage? How would that process unfold?
Really?
Thank you for that question. It's one I don't have an absolute answer for you right now. It's one that we would need to ask the province about for what their mechanism is for triggering those in the future. So I haven't actually been a part of witnessing that trigger in the past, but that would be a conversation with the province.
All right, thank you very much. Any further questions from directors? No, seeing none. Rural directors, all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Moving on to Annex H, provincial referral CRN 000108 for commercial use, Sea Air Seaplanes. Back to Ms. Clark.
Thank you very much. Again, this report is as a result of a referral from Flinrord, and it is an application for adventure tourism for commercial use. The location for this application is Phantom Lake, which is northwest of and in the headwaters of Clohome Lake, and that is in electoral area B. The application is made by a float plane company that wishes to bring customers to the lake for brief sightseeing stops. Staff wanted to note that aircraft landing permissions are regulated by the federal government through the Aeronautics Act. It would, however, be within SCRD's regulatory authority to comment on the land-based portion of the proposed license in this application, for which there is no proposed land alteration or construction. So if future structures are considered, SCRD permit processes would apply, so long as it is not an aerodrome or underneath the Aeronautics Act. And you'll note in this report that staff have made a number of advocacy-related recommendations directed at the province regarding application and review process improvements. Thank you.
All right, Director Ties.
Thanks, Chair. I've actually been up there, and it's a pretty neat lake. It's somebody in the past with a float plane has flown a canoe up there. That's basically the only way you can get there is with a canoe. It was a plane, sorry. Yeah, it's a really neat spot, and I don't see any adverse impacts from this application.
All right, thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you. If the only way you can get up there is a canoe, that's an awful lot of portaging, Director Ties. But anyways, just to reiterate some of the comments that we had at the Area B APC, there was some concern that that this be monitored every year and reported back on, and be supported within the application, that there be an evaluation process every year. And so I just wanted to just check in with Ms. Clark on how we can best assure that that this is monitored on a yearly basis to make sure there's no adverse effects happening to the biology of the area and the ecology of the area.
Julie, did you want to?
Thank you. I'm just scrolling further down to the recommendations to see if there's something there. So what's currently in the recommendations is an advocacy recommendation for the province that in the application process that applicants are required to do a baseline ecological impact analysis, which is not currently required. So if the committee was looking to add to that recommendation or an additional recommendation for follow-up, that would certainly be the committee's purview.
All right, Director Pratt, did you want to follow up on that, or?
Yes, I would, because it's an advocacy piece. I think it's fair to add that in, that an annual biological evaluation and ecological evaluation. So I guess that would be under B. We could, or would you suggest adding a whole other, maybe making a new C and making our current C D? I don't know. So that an annual update be provided. Would that be sufficient wording?
An annual update on ecological impacts and mitigation measures, perhaps?
Would that work, Ms. Clark?
Adding it as C sounds appropriate to me.
Okay.
Director McMahon.
Okay, I have a whole bunch of comments about some of these referrals, and I'll get to a lot of them with the next agenda item. I did go on the provincial website, the portal, and take a look at their portal for these applications. I found it's a good system, and thanks to staff for providing that, because it's really quite interesting. I'm just going to note that there's nothing in these applications about how long the tenure is. Apparently the range is 10 to 30 years, but it doesn't specify. You know, it'd be nice to go to the bank and say, I want a mortgage for 10 to 30 years. What are the odds they're going to look at that kind of thing? It should be, the information should be provided. And that's a fairly long tenure. I wonder about the length of tenure. There are 2 other existing commercial licenses on this lake already. So I strongly support staff's recommendation to have a limit to the number of tenures. In a climate emergency, if we're really in a climate emergency, why are we burning fossil fuels to take people for picnics to remote lakes? You know, I have an issue with this. If they can get electric float planes, as hopefully Harbour Air is putting into motion, then I wouldn't have so much problem with it. But we are still introducing a lot of disruption into remote wilderness areas, and in general, I really don't think it's a good thing. We are going further with more people all the time, and more disruption all the time into more and more remote areas. And so, with respect to staff's recommendations, which I really like, I just I can't support this referral.
All right, Director Lee. Oh, yeah, Director Lee.
Yes, I just have a curiosity question. It's from recommendation 3A, and set the limit on the number of permitted tenures. And I think this is a good idea. I was wondering though, would you include something like that in the OCP is my question. Would that be a good vehicle as to set a forewarning on that kind of a thing? Is that something we should be considering for the future?
Julie?
Thank you very much for the question. These provincial, they are applications to the province, and the province is the final authority on the decisions here. So we would be outside our legislative authority, I believe, to attempt to put a limit on visits to provincial land.
GM Hall?
Thank you. Just to build on the planner's comments, or senior planner's comments, There is reference in our OCPs already to ecological protection and quality of the natural environment, as well as to tourism values. So there are certainly things that can guide us within OCP areas, but as OCPs are not regulatory documents, that wouldn't be an appropriate, even if it was in our scope to regulate something like that. The OCP would not be the place to do that type of regulation. Thank you.
Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Sherry. I want to follow up on Director Pratt's recommendation, and just to tighten up the language a little bit about who's to do the monitoring and the reporting. Would that be the applicant or the ministry? I don't think the wording it just says monitoring and reporting back. So the intent would be that the applicant would report back to the SCRD, or just fleshing out how the reporting back what the expectation would be.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm just going to read you the recommendation here because it's multi-part. Okay, so this starts with recommendation number 3. And that in an effort to advocate for process changes to provincial tenure applications, SCRD would like the province to A, set a limit on the number of permitted tenures, etc. B, require applicants. So the SCRD would like the province to require applicants to submit analysis of potential ecological impact. And so if we're adding C, I would foresee it reading similarly, and hearing your request, require applicants to submit annual follow-up analysis. Something along those lines. Does that help answer the question?
Sort of. The applicants are submitting these analysis to the provincial government as part of their application, correct?
That is the current recommendation.
So the follow through on that would be that they would be required to provide that annual update as written to the province, whether the province wants it or not. Once we can view on the portal, we can view active tenures and what have you. Are we able to, I haven't looked at it in a while, are we able to view supplemental documentation? Like if they submit an annual update to the province, is the public able to log on and view that submission through the portal, for example?
Thank you very much for that. The portal that was recently mentioned is the portal for applications, and it also provides an opportunity for comments during the application process, and it provides the reasons for decision. Once it's a decided application, there's a small grace period, and then it moves over to IMAP BC as a completed tenure or license. And that would be the place where further information is provided. To the best of my knowledge, follow-up documents are not provided there. So it's an overview of the tenure, the type of tenure, the size of it, and the referral number, so that you can be in touch with the province for information about it.
Okay, thank you. Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. Just sort of a follow-up to Director McMahon's comments. You know, there seems to be this great sort of adventure, wilderness experience pressure, you know, from a tourism point of view. But the other flip side of it, and you know, Director McMahon referred to, you know, the burning of fossil fuels to get people there, and you've got aircraft that potentially engines leaking oil or fuel spills or whatever. The other aspect is what happens when something goes wrong up there. It now falls on to, and the weather closes in. So now you've got local search and rescue groups having to deal with these people stranded. You know, it's just another sort of wrinkle in the potential project, but I just wanted to flag it.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we don't want to end up going too far into the weeds here, because it'll be ultimately up to the province to approve it or deny it. We're looking at our recommendations and the things that we can try and act on, and things we'd like the province to improve upon. So it sort of becomes what would you like to say in the province on that particular issue, if anything, or is there provincial oversight or management of this existing already? I mean, you can charter a plane to go just about anywhere in the province already, right? It's just about regular operations. Yeah. Director Paul, I saw you raise your hand.
Yes, I just wanted to make place comment on the fact that there are already 3 existing licenses for that area, and I take I support the comment made by Director Kroll in the sense that we are placing undue hardship or potential hardship on the individual search and rescue teams that may have to respond to any adverse situations that might happen up there. for the record, we are currently in dialogue with the province through our land use planning part. We're a long ways from even beginning that discussion, given all the intricacies of encumbrances that have been imposed thus far. But we are starting to make headway. But we have registered. We have been given a referral for this application, and we are currently in the process of denying every application that is currently being put out there for adventure tourism. In our partnership discussions with our neighboring nations, primarily Squamish, they are now inhibited from being able to practicing their traditional uses of the land, primarily hunting, fishing. It's now to the point where all the user groups that are making use of the area through adventure tourism is creating an unsafe. You can't go out and fire a gun, or you can't go out and hunt, because there are bikers, there are campers, there are all these other individual groups, and it placed an undue hardship for, at least according to what I got from all the people that I've had conversations with. It's an ongoing issue, but I just wanted to note it for the record at this particular point in time. Through our process, we are currently saying until we have a more finite way of addressing everybody's uses, not just one specific user group, we would like to have a bit of a dialogue, and maybe I support the concept of perhaps a 5-year lease and having the annual reports. I think that's a good idea as far as what can be done from this particular forum. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just going to note, perhaps for the recommendations here, that the provincial portal does not show existing tenure holders, and it doesn't give the length of the tenure being proposed. And both those pieces of information are really important in terms of a referral. So can we recommend that those pieces of information be included in the referrals?
Are you looking to add a 3E?
Yep.
And that, Ms. Clark?
Just one point of clarification, if it helps the committee, the length of tenure is included in the portal for applications. And in terms of the other existing tenures, the way the province has this system set up is that in order to see all of those, including the applications, you use the tool of IMAP BC. So that's the province's tool that has absolutely every land use layer that they manage on it. The applications, comments, and reasons for decisions is their engagement tool, for lack of a better summary, for comments from the public during the application stage. So hopefully that helps distinguish the two tools.
Follow up, Director McMahon?
Yeah, I was under the impression that the tenure range they gave was 10 to 30 years. That's not specific. I mean, that doesn't tell me anything. That tells me maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20, maybe 25, maybe 30. Yeah. Just, they're being very imprecise, but we can leave this for right now. I realize we have a broader.
Got a lot of items to get through today too. So we have recommendations here, including a new 3C and then reordering the existing C down to D, but nothing's been moved yet. Would anybody like to move any particular recommendations? Rural directors? Director Pratt?
I'll move the recommendations as with adding in those other items that we've discussed.
Other items, plural? Which ones?
No, sorry. No, just adding in the one I brought in, sorry. I meant we had talked another one, but I don't think we we got a consensus on that, but adding in that
Annual reporting.
that annual reporting in, and I'll move those.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Yeah. Any questions, comments? So it's as presented in our agenda with the addition of a new 3C and taking the current 3C and renumbering it to 3D just to fit a flow there. Director Ties?
I'm just wondering if we want to entertain the suggestion by Director Paul that we limit, we ask for a limit of 5 years.
Director Ties, you're more than welcome to propose an amendment.
All right, I'll propose that amendment.
Okay, seconded by Director McMahon. And I suppose that it would fall under recommendation 2, be 2C, that a tenure only be issued for a period of 5 years. Ms. Clark, something like that?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. All those in favor of the amendment? All right. Rural directors. We seem to have lost Chair Pratt. Okay, so we have an amended motion that's added 2C and added a new 3C and renumbered C to D. Rural directors. All those in favor? All right, that's carried. Opposed? Director McMahon, would you like that recorded? Yes, please. Okay. Okay, moving on to Annex I. Find my information here. Provincial Referral 241-2092 for commercial general use application, endless biking. Over to you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you very much. So SCRD received a referral from Flynn Road for a license of occupation to make use of existing mountain bike trails, and these trails extend from Langdale across to Western Roberts Creek. Within SCRD service areas, there are potential impacts with this application, mainly related to the trails at Sprockets Park. And Sprockets Park is a provincial rec site that is managed and maintained by SCRD in partnership with Local Mountain Bike Group. Recommendations are provided specifically in the report for this portion of the application area. And the board may remember that in 2019, SCRD responded to a provincial referral similar to this application that was specifically looking to make use of sprockets. And the recommendations in this report are quite aligned with the previous response provided by the SCRD. Beyond the recommendations related to sprockets, in having a discussion with provincial staff about this particular application, it was noted to our staff that commercial use applications specifically for mountain biking tours are on the rise in most parts of the province, and that there is interest from Flynn Road staff to refine the application and review process. And they welcomed feedback from our team. These particular referrals are time intensive to review based on what's currently not required by the province in the application process and the application package. And so staff have made a number of process improvement recommendations that you find in this report as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I appreciate the work that staff put into this, and I support all the points raised in the report. I asked staff about a similar application we received last year from Whistler Outback Adventures, and the BC website says that it's still pending. So apparently no decision has been made a year on, which I found a little puzzling, and I was wondering why that was. In general, I was wondering about why we're getting so many applications as to whether these are new users or whether in fact people are just papering existing usages. These applications are by and large, for trails that were built and maintained by volunteers and are supported by our volunteer search and rescue. And so I have some concerns about using them for-profit private operators unless they're going to give back significantly to the community volunteer groups for their efforts. Which brings me to the point that we don't have a recreation officer, a provincial recreation officer on the Sunshine Coast. Many years ago, we were attached to Vancouver Island. Then we got switched over to the Squamish Whistler district. Then we got switched back to Vancouver Island. So not having any recreation officer on the Sunshine Coast means that there's virtually no oversight or enforcement of any of these agreements. There's nobody to do it. The existing recreation officers have a full plate in their primary areas. So I think, we should at the least consider advocating to the province for a recreation officer for the Sunshine Coast, perhaps shared with Powell River, at that. And I'm just going to say that, the use of our trails is rising dramatically. Last weekend, someone I know went up the Mount Elphinstone Summit Trail, and there were 29 other people on that trail, and 28 of them came from off coast. We're having, part of it is COVID impacts, but it's a trend. I've been seeing a lot more people using these trails. And with no provision for oversight or enforcement, I have a hard time, supporting the province to issue these kind of licenses. So thanks.
Thank you for that. Director Lee.
Yes, I was wondering why they need a license of occupation. I don't quite understand why they need one. Couldn't they just go and use the darn trails and there's nothing we can do about it? So that was my question.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you for the question. As an individual, you can certainly go and use the trails. And according to the provincial land use policies, if you are making private use of public land or crown land for the purposes of profit, in an adventure tourism kind of way, in this kind of circumstance, a license of occupation is the application method.
All right. Director Lee, follow up?
Yes. Would that also apply to the people that are doing ecotourism and leading tours around the woods and the trees and all that kind of stuff? They should have license of occupation as well.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My understanding is yes, if there is a for-profit business that is looking to make private use of public land, then a license of occupation is requested by the province.
Thank you.
Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Director McMahon, and I've been out mountain biking in the last couple of months a bit more, and the amount of people that show up on every weekend on the BNK is astounding. I would say that on an average weekend day, you probably have 20 to 30 vehicles up there camping, as well as probably well over 100 people riding that area. It's become very popular, especially in the times of COVID, because it's a great place to get away from the city and without too much hassle and get into some good mountain biking terrain. So, and I think that when we can get some support to maintain these trails from commercial enterprises, then we should. And you know, there's a lot of volunteer hours that go into keeping these fantastic trails up, and they should be supported as well. I think staff has done a pretty good job of putting together some recommendations here, and I'd be happy to move them.
All right, thank you very much. That's rural directors. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Director Hiltz. Any last comments, questions, Director Lee?
Yes, I was just reading my notes. I forget the group that's looking after the Sprockets Park, but did they have comments to make on whether the commercial business would be welcome or not?
Ms. Clark?
Thank you very much for the question. My understanding is the Coast Mountain Bike Association as well as Sunshine Coast Trail Association are both providing comments.
All right, thank you very much. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Does staff know when the process improvement process will actually happen? Has Flynn Rod actually say like this is a 6-month plan or a 6-year plan? Have they indicated anything?
Thank you. It didn't, in my conversation with provincial staff, it didn't sound like it was outlined specifically as yet. Staff were taking forward recommendations to their senior team about how to structure a review process.
Okay. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I look forward to hearing more from the Seashell Nation about how they feel about uses of the hinterland, because we have a lot more uses happening and they're conflicting uses. You know, there are people who want to go out and shoot guns out there and they don't want to shoot mountain bikers and so forth. So we're balancing a lot of conflicting needs in an area that's becoming more populated and more popular. So thanks.
All right, thank you. We've got 14 more items to go on our agenda, so I'm going to call a question for this unless anybody's got any urgently burning questions relating to this item. Rural directors, all those in favor of the recommendations as presented? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to Annex J, application for a proposed 3-lot subdivision in the ALR for 2061 Twin Creeks Road. Over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? How's my volume?
You're good.
Okay. The next application is for ALR 00012, proposed subdivision in the agricultural land reserve. The ICRD received a referral from the Agricultural Land Commission regarding a proposed 3-lot subdivision application. The subject parcel is 16.2 hectares in size and is split zoned rural 2 and agriculture. 2 of the proposed lots are within the agricultural land reserve, and the 3rd comprises the RU2 portion. The proposed subdivision of the ALR portion of the land would create 1 lot of 6.2 hectares in size and 1 lot of 2 hectares in size, with the rationale of overcoming access challenges presented by water courses and topography, and thereby increasing the agricultural use of the land. Staff found that the applicant did not provide sufficient information to demonstrate how subdivision will promote agricultural cultivation in the proposed new lot within the ALR and result in no net loss. The proposed subdivision creates the potential for residential construction and associated uses that could compromise farm potential on Class 4 agricultural land. Over the big picture and long term, it is not clear that this won't undermine the agricultural potential that could be realized by keeping the lots together and pursuing an access solution achieved by either boundary adjustment or easement agreement. Although subdivision of the RU2 portion for the ALR from the ALR portion of the parcel may be considered through the normal subdivision process, staff did not recommend supporting this application for subdivision in the ALR.
Okay, Thank you very much. Directors, do you have any questions? Director Lee.
The only question I have is I was trying to figure out why the heck they wanted another road into the agricultural land when they have one that's already there to what I would think would be the farmhouse home for the agricultural land. I was curious what the purpose of that access was for then. I don't know. It's just a curiosity question.
Staff?
Thank you for the question. For clarification, the application speaks about creating access to the middle portion, the 6.1 proposed 6.1 hectare lot, which is currently not accessible due to being separated from the residential portion by a large ravine. And there's no access on road access on any other side for that 6.1 proposed 6.1 lot, hectare lot.
Thank you. The applicant is actually in the attendees, so I'm going to bring them in. They've asked if they can say a few words, and so they will be rejoining us momentarily.
Hello.
Welcome, Lucas.
Hi. Yeah, so there is no access to the center portion of ALR. SCRD planning department had proposed that a possible access may be possible through an easement from the neighboring property to the east. We had approached the current owner and the owner's daughter who lives on the land, and they had denied. And for good reason too. I think it is unrealistic to ever expect an easement to come through that neighboring property, just to the large burden that it would create on the property owners. The driveway would have to go directly through the center of their land in front of one of their front doors, require clearing of their property and possibly the demolition of one of their outbuildings. I find it highly unrealistic to expect any property owner to allow an easement for people to put a driveway in and allow farm equipment to be ferried in and out.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee.
Just to clarify it for me, there is it looks like a new road on the, starting on the west side and coming into the existing ALR land.
Yes, that is correct. So that section is divided by significantly large ravines and water courses that are impassable, and that creates it so the center section has no access to it whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. The applicant's application came before the Agriculture Advisory and ABC, which I attended both. And as the application is framed, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between what the applicant's intention is and the way it's framed. So what occurred at both of the meetings is that people are interested in more details, but it's not quite there, so that the application needs a little bit more development in order to be more fully explored. So I think that's perhaps regrettable that I'm supportive of the decision that's made. I am supportive of the applicant continuing to discuss with the regional district to figure out a way to find a use for this property that will satisfy their needs. So yeah, I will be ready to advance the recommendations when necessary.
Okay. Are there other questions for either staff or the applicant based on this report? No? Director Hiltz?
Yes, Chair, I'll move the application.
Just before we move here, I actually have a few more words, if I could just take 2 minutes here. That's all right.
Okay, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. So yeah, I'm 26 years old. I was born and raised on the Sunshine Coast, and other than leaving for university, I've lived in Langdale my entire life. Both my parents and grandparents together actually built Langdale Heights, and they've owned it for nearly 30 years now. The proposal that we're looking at is for the property that it shares a border with. This proposal is in keeping with the goals of the ALR and the ALC. The community gardens that weren't really touched on in the report, but were proposed, would be supported by us and would be focused by use of the residents of the RV park. In my opinion, it seems like a project that definitely should be supported by local government rather than opposed by it. I believe that the plan that we have come up with is a much better solution to accessing this land, rather than saying these issues tend to work themselves out in the long term, a phrase that has been repeated to me. We're not asking to withdraw anything from the ALR or to have any negative effect on agricultural land whatsoever. All we are asking is for the opportunity to access a section of land that has always been landlocked. And realistically, without this project, it will almost certainly stay that way. I have recently received some input from one of the planners at the Agricultural Land Commission. She had told me that one of the only reasons she has seen a subdivision approved in the ALR is if there is a significant impediment to farming the property as a cohesive unit. She gave me the examples of a road, a large watercourse, or a cliff. The ravines on this property are examples of both large watercourses and cliffs. My intent isn't to split up the property, sell everything, and then leave. My brother and I want to stay and be a part of it, but to do this, we need your support so that young entrepreneurs like us actually have a chance to stay and have a future on the Sunshine Coast. Most of the people that I have graduated with have left the coast due to the job and housing market that makes living on the Sunshine Coast such a challenge for young people. I strongly hope that it is the goal of our local government to support new entrepreneurs and developers on the coast. And I hope you will give us a chance to do this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments. I can certainly, as a younger individual on the Sunshine Coast myself, I can certainly understand the pain and the hardships of being a younger person here on the coast. Director Hiltz?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the comments from the applicant. My summary is, I think people want to see something happen. It's just the way that the application is framed doesn't seem to provide people with enough information, or myself, to make a decision. So that's why I'll be supporting the staff recommendations, and I'll move the recommendations as presented on page 296.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the comments of Director Hiltz, because I was also at the Agriculture Advisory Committee meeting, and the application as it stands did not make it clear to the people in the meeting how this land would be used for agriculture and how the subdivision of it would support its use for agriculture. If that is made really clear, then you can probably put together a plan that they can support. So, thanks.
I see GM Hall has unmuted himself.
Oh.
Okay. Thought maybe you had something to add. So,
no, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Director Lee.
I'm relatively new into this discussion, but I don't understand what the proposal is here. That's why I was asking the questions I was, because if the whole intent is to get access into that proposed Lot C so that it can be developed, and Lot A and B remain in the agricultural land and are better serviced by this access, that would seem a very noble goal. But I can't get that out of reading this application. So I do understand what Director Hiltz is saying here, but my question is a little different, and it's for the directors. Do we have to say no or yes, or can we suggest that it goes away and further information be provided so we don't set it back? Is that something we should be considering? that's my comments. I'm not prepared to make that motion, of course, because I'm supporting Director McMahon and Director Hiltz, who knows way more about this than me. So it's a curiosity question on my part.
So you're wondering, just from a process perspective, if the applicant can take this application, perhaps we defer it, go away, work on it, bring it back, see if they can meet the criteria of the Agriculture Advisory Committee, and then come back to us.
That was my thoughts on here, sitting listening. Yes.
Do staff want to address that? Is that an option for the applicant? Mr. Patey?
Thank you for the questions. Since this is a referral from the ALC, the board would be providing, I guess, a recommendation to endorse or not to endorse the application to date. As I understand, this application has been floating since 2018. And if I can just kind of clarify some of the issues that we see in this application, is that on the information that we have to date, it appears that it's a single family lot subdivision, which is the lot to the lower right-hand corner of the property. I can't remember. I don't have the plan open in front of me at the moment. But that the central lot essentially would become a landlocked parcel. There is no access to it. And under the Land Title Act, while access by easement may be possible and may be considered by the approving officer, access is to be provided where the property has access to a system of roads, which would require that this parcel achieve access to the lot that's through the property and through a panhandle to the road that's to the west of the subject property, so that we don't end up with a landlocked parcel. Further to that, there isn't any evidence by way of a farm plan or an agrologist's assessment or an agrologist's report that the proposed subdivision will result in a net benefit to agriculture. And that's one of the criteria that the Agricultural Land Commission considers in reviewing subdivision applications. So on those two issues, staff provided their recommendation.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers Director Lee's question. Okay. Director Seegers.
Sorry, I don't think that actually addresses Director Lee's question. What kind of timing are we looking at here? And is it possible to give the applicant additional time to address the concerns that are coming up at the committee here? Or is it such that our timing is we have to give a response now?
Mr. Patey?
Thank you for the question. I don't believe there's a time limit for the application to the ALC. Applications to the ALC can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months for them to make a determination and for them to get it in front of their board to make a decision. The application could come back to staff to work with the applicant. And we have been in discussions with the applicant specifically about providing evidence to demonstrate that this proposal would have a net benefit to agriculture. And by way of providing staff with a farm plan, which is put together in collaboration with a professional agrologist and an agrologist assessment, and then establishing that plan as part of their application proposal. Typically, the ALC would require that as a minimum for subdivision in the ALR.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from directors? No? Rural directors only. All those in favor of the recommendations as presented? Sorry, Director Pratt, I missed your hand. Was that up or no? Yes? Okay. So that's passed. So just to the applicant, it sounds like there is an opportunity for this to move forward. It just does need some more work for the SCRD board, the committee and the board to be willing to support it. So good luck, and perhaps we will see you again.
Okay, thank you, board, and I will follow up with Dave there. Have a good day.
Okay, moving on to Annex Okay. Welcome Woods Wilderness and Connor Park Disc Golf Proposal and Future Planning. Parks Planning Coordinator. Welcome, Mr. Adams.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So this report provides a summary as information of the initial findings from a public consultation process regarding a proposed disc golf course in Welcome Woods Wilderness and or Connor Parks in Area B in Half Moon Bay. The public process also gathered important information to help with future planning in these parks. This public process was initiated after the Sunshine Coast Disc Golf Association appeared as a delegation to the Planning and Community Development Committee last year, where they proposed to partner with the SCRD in the development of an 18-hole disc golf course on lands within these park systems. A broad spectrum of important public input, questions, and suggestions was received during the process, and a summary of that process and feedback can be found in Attachment A. Following best practices, this report represents the public input portion of the process, and a future staff report will provide the technical opinions of staff with recommendations for action. Thank you.
All right, so this report is just for information. Do directors have any questions, comments? Director Pratt?
Just to say that I attended the community consultation that our staff had at Half Moon Bay Elementary. It was very well attended. Really impressed with the level of engagement of the community as well as the way staff handled the project. So looking forward to seeing the technical recommendations when they come forward.
All right, Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, thanks for the report. Yeah, I just note on page 313, like it's a dead heat, huh? In terms of yes or no. So my question is about the size of the development. The comparisons to the Shirley Macy disc golf course has been made, and you know, a quick measurement looks at maybe a hectare in size, and this is it's quite a different size scale of operation than what we're seeing. So will that sort of scale of the operation be coming forth in the future report? Or I'm just wondering how that issue of scale of the facility was presented to the public.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question, Chair. The project still needs some planning to get to that level. It was presented to be larger than the Shirley Macy one, which I believe is about half of the number of holes. So this would be larger, and that would have to be looked at definitely once a little more information was provided with maybe a draft plan.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for that. Look forward to seeing it in its next stages. Yeah, and onward we go. Annex L, page 326, RFP for Refrigeration Services Agreement Contract Award Report. Turn this over to our Facility Services Coordinator.
Thank you, Chair. I can speak to this one, and I believe we'll have our Facility Services Coordinator join us as a resource if needed. So to comply with provincial safety requirements, SCRD must have a standing contract with a licensed refrigeration contractor, and staff have worked through the competitive bid process and recommend award to TempPro. And an amendment of $13,800 to the recreation-based budget is required to reflect the contract value. And completing the award will address a technical safety BC order against SCRD, and it's one of the last regulatory projects flowing from the tragedy in Fernie. And directors will remember that that was quite an extensive list, and we're getting close to the end of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is all voters or all directors except for Area A. Sorry, Pender Harbor. Director Seegers.
I'll move the recommendations as presented.
All right, is there a second? Okay, lots of seconders. Director McMahon, did you want to say anything?
Just a quick question. Can I assume that the refrigeration contractors are off coast, that we don't have people locally who can handle this?
That's correct for this type of industrial work.
Okay. All right, seeing no other questions, all those in favor? All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to Annex M, renaming the Halkett Bay Dock on Gambier Island. I don't have it handy here, so we'll turn it over to whoever wants to speak to it.
Thank you, Chair. So this report starts on page 330 of the agenda. Property owners near Halkett Bay wrote to SCRD regarding renaming of the SCRD dock located on the southeast part of Gambier Island, which is near but not actually in Halkett Bay, and which shares a name with a nearby provincial dock. And staff completed preliminary research as directed by the board and recommend that the idea be referred to the stakeholders listed in the recommendations and that feedback be reported to a future committee. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Directors, any questions? This is voting B, D, E, and F. Director Pratt.
I'd be happy to move the recommendations on page 330, please.
All right, seconder? Seconded. Any questions? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the report is appreciated. The confusion on the water is definitely there from emergency procedures, recreational boaters. It is an issue. My question is about does the SCRD have any kind of a protocol agreement with the Squamish Nation in terms of renaming within the territory? Like is the Squamish going to receive a referral as others do, or is there something different? Like, do we have a protocol about how this would be referred to them?
Mr. Hall.
Thank you for the question. No, no. To my knowledge, there isn't a naming or a renaming protocol with the Squamish Nation, and while staff notes that the question is, or the recommendation is framed as let's send a letter to all of these groups, staff will ensure that the question is put with care and respect to the nation. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions from directors? Director Ties.
Yeah, I did kind of think that there might be some sort of opportunity to at least have a closer discussion with the nation as to whether there might be a First Nations name that might be appropriate for that dock. But I'll leave it up to staff to address that letter appropriately.
Great. Okay, no other hands raised. All those in favor? B, D, E, and F. All right, that's carried. Thank you very much. Looking at Annex N, Agricultural Advisory Committee, is there anything in those minutes which we've already received that anybody would like to talk about, question, address, bring up, put forward? No. Okay. Oh, Director Hiltz.
Yeah, it's more of a sharing. It was at the meeting, the community amenity, which is somewhere slightly over $75,000. It's really nice to see this discussion happening, and the AAC people are definitely looking forward to seeing a report and figuring out how this money can be used to support agriculture. So yeah, good discussion. Nice to see that moving out of the in basket up into the top of the in basket. So thank you.
Okay. All right, then we're going to move on. We're going to look at Annex O, P, Q, R, and S all at once, which is all APC minutes. Is there anything in any of those that anybody would like to bring forward, discuss, contemplate? Seeing a no from Half Moon Bay. Any other directors? No? Okay. Then I guess we will move on to our communications. Annex T, U, V, and W. Let me just reposition my agenda here. Is there anything in there that anybody would like to discuss, bring forward? Don't tell me we might actually make this under 3 hours. Director Ties.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask whether staff has any comments on the Chinook Swim Club asking for a reduction in lane fees, because you can only do 3 people per lane rather than 8 people per lane now, which would make it a lot more expensive for people to participate.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Chair. And the author of the letter on behalf of the club is in our virtual gallery, I note. Staff's only comment on this would be that fees and charges as they relate to maintaining accessibility of recreation and also the overall sustainability of the recreation service is in scope for the report that's being prepared for the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee in a couple of weeks. And so from staff's perspective, the letter was helpful in informing what we will put into that report. Thank you.
Okay, so this is taken into consideration already for that report that will be coming forward at our next meeting, or at the appropriate meeting. Okay, anything else anybody would like to bring up or address? I had one question on, let's see if I can find it. The chamber letter, Annex W. Item number 3 in there, travel restrictions imposed by the public health officer mean that it is unlikely that there will be a very different market for short-term rentals this summer, which seemed counter to the rest of what they were trying to say. So I don't know if that was a typo or what, but Director Seegers?
Sorry, I was addressing another letter, so
Okay.
finish up what you're doing and then I'll go back to that one.
Sure. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to reach out to the chamber, but going to be different. Going to be interesting to see what this summer holds for us. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up. Director Pratt, can I see your hand?
Just in reference to the chamber letter, I did reply back to them a couple of times prior to the June 30th public hearing. So, and all directors have received a copy of that correspondence as well.
Great. Director Seegers.
Thank you. Given that we're going to be talking about recreation at that meeting on the 23rd, would it be possible to have this letter from Chinook Swim Club be included in correspondence at that meeting or as part of the package or something, so that we don't lose the opportunity to deal with it once we actually have all the information in front of us? And I'd like to staff to figure out what we do with that.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I guess it's the committee's prerogative, but either the letter could be referred as formally referred to staff for inclusion in that report. But staff hear the request and feel empowered to include it with the report in a couple weeks. So I'll probably save you making a motion. Thank
Director
you.
Seegers, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Director Lee?
I think with the chamber letter, we have to be careful not to discuss it because of the public hearing actually already over. So it could be considered new information. I think we should recognize that fact.
I did have that question during agenda review because there it is on our agenda. It's not, yeah. Yep, as long as nobody else has any further comments on it, we're good. Director Seegers?
Yeah, I noticed the date was submitted actually prior to the public hearing. So it will be part of the record. We probably don't want to discuss it, but it is part of the record.
Okay. Anything else from directors? No? All right. Well, we don't have an in-camera session today, or this morning. We do later. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Moved? Seconded? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you very much for everybody being here today. And we'll see you this afternoon. Thank you. Do we have questions? We've got one from Sarah. We'll allow her to talk.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Just for the Chinook part, is it okay to speak on that for a moment?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So is what I just wanted to bring forward was that we have a unique opportunity to work together in this return to sport plan, because I know that we're lucky our Lifesaving BC and Swim BC have exactly the same protocols. So we're really in line with each other when we do make our return to sport plan, which is great. I've been talking with Ian and Kim and working towards getting something going that will keep all the staff safe there and our staff. But in the gradual return to sport plan, we have a very small group of swimmers that it's imperative that they train right now. I have one that's going to Olympic trials, and other athletes in this caliber have been in the pool already. And if I can't get her in here, then I probably will have to send her off coast, which we've been really trying not to do, because in our phase 2 plans, we're not supposed to travel between communities so that we keep our communities safe. But now we are in phase 3. And I know you guys are all working on that very closely, and that's fantastic. But I was wanting to put forth that maybe we can work together in getting back into the pool, where we could be like the guinea pigs for going back to the facility. We're a very small group. I can work with the SCRD, go to the training meetings, make sure that we're in line with each other, and make it safe for everyone. Just want to put you guys on, inform you of what we've been thinking about. And I know you already know about our fee problems with the small group of people going back. Collecting enough fees to pay for the lanes at $17.50 is a little tight, but as a coach, I'm willing to volunteer my time to coach these kids if it comes down to that. But if that's considered, that'd be fantastic. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. Thank you for being here.
One more thing is it can help offset the cost of having 3 guards at the pool that are already there during shower time, and we're flexible on when we can come in if that's an approach that you want to take.
All right. We're going to know more when staff bring forward the facilities report at the Corporate Services Committee meeting later this month.
Thank you.
So, all right. Any other questions? We've lost the report. We've lost the media. So, oh well.
That's okay.
All right. Then we will see everybody this afternoon or later. Bye.
We have time for lunch. Awesome.
Sure do.